The massive alien ships hung in Earth's sky like silver teardrops, their surfaces reflecting the morning sun across the cities below. Captain Minho Park pressed his face against the cold window of the Seoul Defense Station, watching the Zephyrian vessels settle into perfect orbital formations. Each ship was the size of a small city, but they moved with the grace of dancers, her organic curves beautiful and somehow alive. "They're beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Ji-won Kim, standing beside him. Her breath fogged the glass as she spoke. "I never imagined first contact would be so ... peaceful." Minho nodded slowly, but something in his chest felt tight. Months had passed since the Zephyrians had arrived, and everything had changed. The aliens called themselves the Coalition of Peaceful Worlds, and they had welcomed Earth with open arms and gentle smiles. They spoke of ending war, hunger, and disease. They promised to guide humanity into a golden age of prosperity and peace. And they had kept their promises. Almost overnight, the alien technology had transformed Earth. Diseases that had killed millions simply vanished. Crops grew twice as fast and 3 times as large. The air grew cleaner, the water purer. Humanity had never been healthier or happier, but with every gift came gentle restrictions. The Zephyrians explained that humans were not ready for certain technologies. Space travel beyond the solar system was too dangerous. Advanced weapons were unnecessary in their peaceful age. Military research was a waste of resources that could be better spent on farming and mining. Sir Juan's voice carried a note of frustration. Another message from the Zephyrian Council. They want us to increase food production by another 20%. They also suggest we close down the remaining military academies and convert them to agricultural schools. Minho turned from the window, his jaw tight. What's their reasoning this time? They say warfare is a primitive concept, that humanity's future lies in peaceful pursuits like farming and resource extraction. Jiwan's fingers drummed against her tablet. They've classified us as a Class 7 pacifist species. According to their records, we're too gentle and conflict-averse to handle the responsibilities of advanced civilization. The words stung because they weren't entirely wrong. Humanity had chosen diplomacy over warfare when the aliens arrived. They had laid down their weapons and opened their hearts to these beautiful visitors from the stars. But the Zephyrians had missed something important in their analysis. They had only seen humanity's peaceful response to their arrival. They had never bothered to study how humans behaved when they were truly threatened in the months following. First contact. Former military personnel like Minho had been quietly reassigned to civilian roles. The Zephyrians called it career optimization, helping humans find their true calling in peaceful pursuits. Weapons factories were converted to produce farming equipment. Military bases became agricultural research centers. The great warships of Earth's Navy were scrapped, or metal recycled into orbital platforms for growing food. Minho walked to his desk and pulled up the latest reports. Earth's population was healthier and more prosperous than ever before. Children no longer died from diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. The elderly lived longer, stronger lives. Hunger was becoming a memory as the alien agricultural techniques transformed barren land into fertile fields. But beneath the surface, something was stirring. In quiet conversations between former soldiers, in coded messages between old military networks, in the worried glances of parents watching their children grow up in this new world, a question was forming. What happened when the protection of their gentle alien guardians wasn't enough? Sir Guan said quietly. I've been monitoring coalition communications. There are reports of attacks on Outer Rim colonies, something called the Void Reapers. The Zephyrians are keeping it classified, but their fleet movements suggest they're preparing for something big. Minho's blood ran cold. He had heard whispers of the Void Reapers in the encrypted military channels that still operated in the shadows. Raiders from the dark space between galaxies, they were said to be everything the Coalition was not. Violent, ruthless, and completely without mercy. Are any human colonies at risk? He asked. The mining colony on Kepler 4 for to be went dark last week? The Zephyrians say it was a technical malfunction. Jiwon's voice trailed off. Minho stared at the alien ships hanging in the sky above Seoul. For months, they had been symbols of hope and protection. Now they looked different somehow. They still gleamed like jewels in the sunlight, but their beauty seemed cold and distant. They were the ships of benevolent guardians, but they were also the ships of jailers who had decided what was best for their prisoners. The Zephyrians had classified humanity as pacifists based on their peaceful response to first contact. They had seen humans lay down their weapons and assumed they didn't know how to fight. They had witnessed acts of diplomacy and cooperation and concluded that warfare was beyond human understanding. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had confused choosing peace with being unable to make war. They had mistaken kindness for weakness. They had assumed that because humans preferred to grow gardens, they had forgotten how to pull weeds. As Minho watched the alien ships patrol the skies above his home, he felt something ancient and dangerous stirring in his chest. It was the same feeling his ancestors had known when strangers threatened their families. It was the quiet rage of a peaceful man pushed too far. The Zephyrians believed they were protecting humanity from the dangers of the universe, but they were about to learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't the darkness between the stars. It was a gentle people who had finally run out of patience. 20 years had passed since the silver ships first appeared in Earth's sky. In the vast vertical farms of New Seoul, Hunali walked between rows of perfectly engineered crops that stretched from floor to ceiling in endless green towers. The plants grew faster and larger than anything in human history, their leaves glowing with health under the alien lighting systems. "Another record harvest," said Tae Young-cho, her young assistant, reading numbers from his tablet. "The Zephyrians will be very pleased. We're producing enough food to feed 3 worlds now." Huna smiled and nodded, but the pride felt hollow in her chest. Before the aliens came, she had been a military engineer, designing defense systems and weapons that could protect Earth from any threat. Now she spent her days counting vegetables and managing crop rotations. The Zephyrians had called it a much better use of her talents. She touched the wall screen and pulled up the global production reports. Earth had become the garden of the galaxy, feeding dozens of worlds across the coalition. Vast mining operations stripped resources from the planet's surface and sent them to alien factories in distant star systems. Humanity had prospered beyond all dreams, but they had also become something else entirely. "Huna," a soft voice called from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Xiaojin Bei approaching through the green corridors. Officially, he was the director of asteroid mining operations. Officially, he was one of the few people who still remembered what Earth had been like before the gentle conquest. "Hello, Xiaojin," she said carefully. Certain conversations still felt dangerous. The Zephyrians didn't forbid humans from talking about their past, but they made it clear that dwelling on primitive concepts like warfare was unhealthy. "I need to show you something," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "Can you meet me tonight? The old place?" Huna felt her heart skip. The old place was an abandoned subway tunnel beneath the city, one of the few spots where the alien monitoring systems couldn't reach. She hadn't been there in years, but some habits from the underground resistance never died. That night, Huna made her way through the darkened streets of New Seoul. The city gleamed with alien technology, its buildings reaching toward the stars. Like crystalline towers, flying vehicles hummed quietly overhead, carrying people to their assigned jobs in the great machine of galactic civilization. Everything was perfect, clean, and peaceful. She slipped into the old subway entrance, her footsteps echoing in the darkness. Emergency lights flickered on as she descended, revealing walls covered in rust and forgotten human graffiti. This was what Earth had looked like before the Zephyrians. Came rough and imperfect, but undeniably human. Seijin was waiting for her in the abandoned platform, along with a dozen other faces she recognized. Former soldiers, engineers, pilots, and scientists who had once worked on humanity's defense systems. They met here sometimes, these ghosts of Earth's military past, to remember what they had been before they became farmers and miners. "Thank you all for coming," Seijin said, his voice carrying in the empty space. I have news that changes everything. He activated a small device, and holographic images filled the air above them. Star charts, ship movements, casualty reports. The Kepler colony is gone, he said simply. Not technical failures like they told us, an attack. Something called the Void Reapers hit the mining station 3 weeks ago, killed everyone they could. Fine, the group went silent. Huna felt cold spreading through her body like ice water. Kepler 4 for DB was a human colony. 3,000 people who had volunteered to mine asteroids in the outer system. They had children there, families, dreams of building something new among the stars. How do you know this? Asked Commander Yumen. Song, a former Navy officer who now managed orbital elevators. I have contacts in the rescue operations, Siagan replied. The survivors described professional killers. Ships that came out of nowhere and started executing civilians. The Zephyrians fought them off, but barely. They lost half their fleet in the battle. They didn't tell us, Huna said, understanding flooding through her. They let us believe. It was an accident. It gets worse, Siagan continued. This isn't the first attack. The Void Reapers have been hitting Coalition worlds for months. The Zephyrians have been fighting a war, and they've kept it completely secret from humanity. The implications hit the group like a physical blow. For 20 years, humans had trusted their alien protectors to keep them safe. They had given up their weapons, their armies, their ability to defend themselves. They had become sheep in a pen, trusting the shepherds to keep the wolves away. They're planning to evacuate us, Siagan said quietly. Move all human populations to protected worlds in the galactic core. Away from the fighting, away from any chance of defending ourselves. Huna closed her eyes and saw the faces of the children in her agricultural complex, bright and happy and completely helpless. They had grown up in a world without war, without weapons, without any understanding that sometimes violence was the only answer to violence. We can't let that happen, she said, her voice hard. We won't be cattle led to slaughter. Then what do you suggest? Asked Yemen. We have no weapons, no ships, no military infrastructure. The Zephyrians made sure of that. Siagan smiled grimly. They made sure we had no obvious weapons. They never really understood what we were capable of before they arrived. They certainly don't understand what we've been building in secret. Commander Yemen's song floated in the sterile medical bay of the rescue ship Peaceful Dawn. Watching the survivors of Kepler 4 for Tubi receive treatment for wounds that should never have existed in the Coalition's perfect universe. The official reports called them victims of industrial accidents. But Yemen had seen too many real industrial accidents to believe that lie. Dr. Yunji Park sat on the edge of a medical bed, her hands shaking as a robot treated the burn marks on her arms. She had been the chief medical officer of the mining colony, a bright woman who had volunteered to help humanity expand into the stars. Now her eyes held a darkness that Yemen recognized from his old military days. Dr. Park, he said quietly, sitting beside her bed, I need you to tell me what really happened out there. Yunji looked up at him, studying his face carefully. After a moment, she seemed to reach a decision. You were military, weren't you, before the integration? Yemen nodded. Ship-to-ship combat specialist. Now, I run medical supply routes. For the Coalition. He kept his voice neutral. But something in his tone must have convinced her. They came without warning, Yunji whispered, glancing around to make sure no Zephyrian overseers were listening. Black ships that seemed to eat the light around them. No communication, no demands, no mercy. They just started killing, she described. How the Void Reapers had attacked the mining platform like a surgical strike. Fast, efficient, and brutal. They hadn't been interested in taking prisoners or stealing resources. They had come to murder every human they could find. The Zephyrians tried to defend us, Yunji continued. Their ships arrived within hours of the attack, but they fought like they were dancing. Beautiful formations, elegant maneuvers, trying to disable rather than destroy. The Reapers cut through them like paper. Yemen felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many people died? 3,000 souls, Yenji's voice broke. Miners, engineers, families with children. The Reapers hunted them through the corridors like animals. Some they killed quickly, others, she shuddered and couldn't continue. What did the Zephyrians say afterward? that it was regrettable, but inevitable, that some conflicts were too dangerous for peaceful species to understand. They want to relocate all remaining human colonies to safer systems, away from the frontier. Yuanji's hands clenched into fists. They're treating us like frightened children who need to be protected from the real world. That night as the peaceful Dawn docked at Luna Station. Yemen made his way to the old communication array in the station's forgotten lower levels. The equipment was ancient by Coalition standards, but it still worked. More importantly, it used frequencies that the Zephyrians didn't monitor because they considered them primitive. He sent a coded message to addresses he hadn't used in 20 years. Contacts scattered across the solar system who had once worn the same uniform? The message was simple: Kepler colony destroyed, 3,000 dead. Coalition won't let us defend ourselves. Time to remember who we used to be. The responses came quickly. Former soldiers, pilots, engineers, and officers who had been reassigned to peaceful careers but had never forgotten their true calling. Within hours, Yemen had confirmation that the old network still existed, dormant but ready to activate. The next morning, he received a priority message from Dr. Sajin Bey on Ceres Station. The man's official title was mining coordinator, but Yemen knew his real background in weapons development. The message was brief. Emergency meeting. Bring medical supplies to Asteroid Field 7G. Humanitarian mission. Yemen smiled grimly. Humanitarian mission was old military code for a black operation. Some things never changed. 3 days later, his medical transport approached what appeared to be a routine mining operation in the asteroid belt. But as he drew closer, Yemen began to notice details that didn't fit. The mining equipment was too sophisticated, the power readings too high. The security too tight for a simple rock-crushing operation. SEO June met him at the airlock. He's looking older, but with the same sharp intelligence in his eyes. Thank you for coming, Commander. I have something to show you that will change everything. He led Yemen through corridors that looked like mining tunnels but felt like military installations. They passed workshops where teams of engineers worked on projects hidden behind privacy screens. The air hummed with energy from machinery that definitely wasn't designed for mining asteroids. For 20 years, we've been good little farmers and miners, Seojin explained as they walked. We've followed Coalition guidelines, accepted their restrictions, trusted them to protect us. Some of us never forgot what we learned in our previous lives. They entered a vast chamber carved from the asteroid's core. Yemen stopped and stared in amazement. The space was filled with construction bays containing sleek, deadly shapes that could only be weapons. Missile systems disguised as mining charges. Railgun batteries that looked like our processing equipment. Fighter craft hidden inside cargo containers. The Zephyrians classified us as pacifists based on our reaction to first contact, Seojin said. They never studied how we fought before they arrived because they assumed we didn't know how to fight at all. They were wrong. Yemen walked between the hidden weapons, recognizing design principles from his military days, but improved with 20 years of alien technology. How many people know about this? Enough, Seojin replied. Former military personnel scattered across the system, all of them tired of being treated like sheep. The Zephyrians are good people, but they're naive. I think the universe can be made safe through kindness and superior technology. The Void Reapers are about to teach them otherwise. When that happens, Seojin's smile was cold as space. Then humanity will remind the galaxy what happens when you threaten a species. That only looks peaceful. In the depths of asteroid mining station Ceres 7, Dr. Seojin Bey stood before a wall of screens showing star maps painted red with destruction. The Void Reapers had broken through the Coalition's outer defenses like a knife through paper. Dozens of worlds had gone dark in the past month, their populations dead or scattered to the void. The Arcturus system fell this morning, reported Chief Engineer Nari Kong, her voice tight with controlled anger. 2 billion people. The Zephyrian fleet tried to evacuate them, but the Reapers caught the refugee ships in open space. Seojin closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every lost life. For 20 years, humanity had trusted the Coalition to protect them. They had given up their weapons, their armies, their right to defend themselves. Now that trust was being paid for in blood. What's the Coalition's response? He asked. They're pulling back to core systems, Nari replied. Full evacuation of all frontier worlds. They want to move Earth's population to Sanctuary Prime deep in Coalition space, where it's supposedly safe. Supposedly, Seojin muttered. The Zephyrians meant well, but they fought like diplomats even in the face of genocide. They tried to disable, rather than destroy, to capture, rather than kill. Against an enemy that showed no mercy, their civilized tactics were worse than useless. Sir, called Lieutenant Boromyu from her communication station. We're receiving reports from our hidden facilities across the system. Operation Sunrise is ready for activation. Seojin felt his heart race. Operation Sunrise was the code name for humanity's secret rearmament program. For 20 years, former military personnel had worked in the shadows, using their assigned civilian jobs to build weapons and prepare for the day when the Coalition's protection wouldn't be enough. Mining operations had secretly manufactured railgun components. Agricultural stations had hidden missile production lines behind their crop storage facilities. Even the orbital elevators carried concealed weapon systems in their support structures. The Zephyrians had never suspected because they had never looked for weapons in peaceful places. Signal all stations, Seojin ordered. Execute Sunrise. It's time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of. Across the solar system, hidden facilities began dropping their disguises. On Luna, what appeared to be a cheese processing plant opened hidden bays to reveal rows of fighter craft. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms transformed into weapons platforms, their industrial equipment revealing secondary functions as mass drivers and particle beam weapons. The massive agricultural ships that supplied food to a dozen worlds suddenly sprouted armor plating and missile pods. Research stations that studied plant genetics unveiled manufacturing bays where the tools of war had been carefully prepared. Even Earth's orbital elevators, those peaceful symbols of human cooperation, deployed hidden defense grids. Admiral Huna Lee stood on the bridge of what the Coalition database listed as the Agricultural Transport New Soul. In reality, it was humanity's first Dreadnought-class warship. It's built in secret over 15 years, using materials officially designated for farming equipment. Around her, similar vessels emerged from their hiding places throughout the inner system. Ma'am, reported communications officer Guan Kim. We're receiving priority transmission from Zephyrian Command. They're ordering immediate evacuation of all human assets to protected space. Tell them we decline, Huna said calmly. Humanity chooses to stand and fight. The response was immediate and predictable. The Zephyrians couldn't understand why a peaceful species would refuse protection. They explained patiently that the Void Reapers were beyond human comprehension. Too dangerous for a species classified as pacifist to engage. They still don't get it, muttered Captain Minho Park, now serving as Huna's tactical officer. They think because we chose peace with them, we don't know how to make war. Huna smiled grimly. They're about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war.
Ow!
On the outer edge of the solar system, long-range sensors detected the approaching Void Reaper fleet. Hundreds of dark ships moving in perfect formation, their hulls designed to inspire terror. They had crushed every force the Coalition had sent against them. They expected Earth to be just another easy target. But as they entered the solar system's outer boundary, something unexpected happened. Space itself seemed to come alive with hidden weapons. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves as fortress platforms. Seemingly empty space erupted with camouflaged ships. Even the Solar Collection's satellites began tracking targets with weapon systems no one knew existed. All stations report ready, announced Lieutenant Taeyong Cho from the Weapons Control Station. We have targeting solutions on the entire Reaper fleet. One studied the tactical display, seeing 20 years of careful preparation about to be unleashed. The Zephyrians had cataloged humanity as a species too gentle for warfare, based on their peaceful response to first contact. They had missed the most important fact about humans. They were gardeners by choice, not nature. Attention all ships. She broadcast on the general frequency.
For 20 years, we've been the galaxy's farmers and miners. We've fed worlds and built cities. We've been good citizens of the Coalition.
Her voice grew hard. But before we were farmers, we were something else. Today, we remember. The Void Reapers continued their approach, confident in their superiority. They had destroyed every force sent against them, reduced mighty civilizations to ash and memory. They expected Earth to fall like all the others. They were about to discover that the most dangerous enemy wasn't always the one that looked threatening. Sometimes it was the quiet gardener who had finally decided it was time to pull some weeds. Admiral Huna Lee stood on the bridge of the New Sol, watching the Void Reaper fleet approach Earth like a plague of black locusts. 200 human warships hung in formation around her, each one disguised for decades as peaceful civilian vessels. Mining ships that were actually destroyers. Agricultural transports that carried enough firepower to level cities. Research vessels that had been designed from the ground up as weapons of war. Enemy fleet entering weapons range, announced Captain Minho Park from the tactical station. They're not even trying to hide. They think we're helpless. The Void Reapers had good reason for confidence. For 3 months, they had torn through the Coalition's defenses like paper. Their dark ships moved in perfect formations, bristling with weapons designed for one purpose: killing everything that lived. They had wiped out entire civilizations without losing a single vessel. Zephyrian Command is requesting immediate evacuation, reported Communications Officer Jawan Kim. They're sending all available transports to remove Earth's population to safety. Huna almost laughed. Even now, with humanity's secret fleet revealed, the aliens couldn't understand. They saw humans as gentle farmers who needed protection, not warriors capable of protecting themselves. "Tell them we appreciate the offer," she said. "But Earth stays right where it is." The Reaper fleet drew closer, their ships spreading into attack formation. They had crushed every force sent against them, using the same tactics, overwhelming firepower delivered without mercy. They expected the human fleet to break and run like all the others. Instead, something strange happened. The human ships began to move in patterns the Reapers had never seen before. Not the elegant formations of the Coalition, with their predictable maneuvers and civilized rules of engagement. This was something older, dirtier, more dangerous. "All ships, execute Wolfpack formation," Huna ordered. "Remember, we're not here to dance with them. We're here to kill them all." The human fleet scattered into small groups, each one moving independently, but coordinated with deadly precision. This was military doctrine refined over thousands of years of human warfare. Tactics that the peaceful Coalition had never needed to develop. The Reapers opened fire first, their weapons lighting up the void with streams of destruction. But the human ships weren't where they expected them to be. They had vanished into the asteroid fields, hidden behind debris clouds, used every piece of cover in the solar system. Then Earth itself joined the battle. What the Reapers had taken for agricultural installations suddenly revealed their true nature. Massive railgun batteries hidden beneath crop fields opened fire, hurling projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Mining platforms became missile bases, launching hundreds of warheads disguised as industrial equipment. A direct hit on enemy flagship called out Lieutenant Tae Young-cho. "Their shields are down." But Huna wasn't interested in individual victories. She had studied the Reaper tactics for months, learning from every Coalition defeat. The enemy was strong when fighting organized fleets using conventional tactics. But they had never faced an enemy that fought like humans. "Execute swarm protocol," she ordered. The human ships converged on the Reaper fleet from every direction at once. They didn't fight in neat lines or elegant formations. They attacked like wolves hunting in packs, striking weak points, using every dirty trick they could think of. They rammed damaged enemy ships. They used debris as weapons. They even crashed mining vessels loaded with explosives into Reaper cruisers. The Reapers found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. Human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting with half their systems gone. Commanders who should have surrendered instead launched suicide attacks that took down vessels 10 times their size. "Sir," reported Dr. Yunji Park from the medical station, "we're taking heavy casualties, but the enemy is breaking apart. They don't know how to respond to our tactics." Huna watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Reapers were used to fighting civilized enemies who followed rules and tried to minimize casualties. They had never encountered an enemy that fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. The turning point came when Commander Yemen's song, led a squadron of disguised medical ships directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The Reapers ignored them, assuming they were fleeing civilian vessels. Instead, they were loaded with fusion bombs that detonated simultaneously in the center of the enemy fleet. "Enemy formation is collapsing," announced Minho. "They're trying to retreat." "Negative," Huna said coldly. "No survivors, no witnesses. No one goes home to tell their friends about the peaceful humans." The final phase of the battle was more like a hunt than a war. Human ships pursued the fleeing Reapers through the outer system, running them down one by one. They used every advantage they could find: superior knowledge of the terrain, weapons the enemy didn't understand, and most importantly, a ruthlessness that the civilized coalition could never match. When the last Reaper ship exploded in a ball of fire near Jupiter, eerie silence fell over the solar system. The most feared fleet in the galaxy had been completely destroyed by a species the coalition had classified as pacifists. Admiral Huna Lee accepted the incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. Watching the alien commander's complex features shift between awe and fear, "We had no idea," Admiral Zethkara said quietly. "Your species' capacity for warfare is extraordinary. You classified us as pacifists," Huna replied evenly. "You were wrong. We're gardeners. We prefer to grow things. But when something threatens our garden..." She gestured toward the debris field where the Reaper fleet had been. "We know how to pull weeds." Through the view screen, Earth hung peaceful and blue in the void, unmarked by the battle that had raged above it. To most observers, it still looked like a quiet world of farmers and miners,